is Mayor Greg Hull here? There he is. City Councilor Doug Watson. City Councilor Nicole List. County Chairman Michael Meek. Commissioner Jordan Juarez. County Manager Wayne Johnson. Deputy County Manager Eric Masterson. President of the Chamber of Commerce Jerry Shallow. Did I miss anyone? I think I've got everyone. Okay. All right. So, again, welcome everyone here to the meeting. What we're going to do is we have a moderator that's going to help moderate the meeting. We can just give you a quick, we'll do a quick introduction, presentation, open up for Q&A after that. A little bit about the moderator, Ryan Cangelosi, Albuquerque resident, born and raised here. He actually, prior was the Deputy Chief of Staff under Governor Martinez and is currently the Economic Development individual with the UNM Health Sciences. Okay, and I'll turn it over to Ryan.
Thank you, Fred. Well, first and foremost, it's so nice to see everybody here tonight, coming out here on a Tuesday night to come and be a part of the community. This is what it's all about. And it's awesome that this team from Castelion is here to come and give a great presentation and to also help us understand and answer questions. And so what we're going to do tonight is we're going to let them go through a presentation, as Fred said, and then we're going to also get into question and answer. We have 2 microphones, and so we would like to capture it with the microphone. Sometimes I know you want to jump at your question, just wait patiently. Either Fred, where's Fred? Where did you go? Okay, over there. Or Chad. Chad, where are you? All right, there's Chad. So these are the 2 gentlemen that will have microphones. We ask that everybody be patient. We're going to try to answer as many questions as we can. We do have a cap of when we need to be out of here. They don't want us here all night. So we'll try to respect that as well. But we definitely want everybody to be able to get answers to questions, but to learn about this great company that's coming here. And when they asked me to do this, I'm at the health sciences. I'm dealing with all kinds of health stuff, which is really cool in economic development. But when I see a company like this that wants to come to New Mexico, I want to be a part of it. And this is why I'm here with you tonight. And so it's my pleasure to introduce all of these folks that have come in here from different places from the company Castelion to come and answer our questions. And so it shows their commitment to come to this community and to be a part of it. So first I'd like to introduce Andrew Kreitz, who is the CFO. Bryce Barlow, project manager for the site. Kevin Hopkins, who is director of manufacturing. Arthur Camarillo, who is the head of manufacturing. Greg Zedler, who is the director of program development. Sorry about that. Alex Rosler, who is the deputy director.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for coming out tonight. As you were saying, our intent is we've got a presentation that runs through a little bit of background on who we are, what we're working on, why this is important. We'll get into some detail about processes, safety, environmental, all the impacts that you might be wondering about on the site. And then we want to reserve as much time as possible for Q&A at the end. We want to answer every question that you folks have. I think coming from our perspective, we all have pretty deep backgrounds in aerospace and defense. We work with this stuff a lot. However, we're very sympathetic to the fact that for members of the community, you probably are not dealing with solid rocket motor manufacturing on a regular basis. Definitely something that missile factories sounds very scary, so 100% sympathetic to wanting to learn a lot more about that. We want to share as much information as we can, and we think that we have a lot of sort of good facts, background, context that'll help you guys understand exactly what we're doing, demystify it a bit, dispel some misconceptions, and we think the facts will show that this is going to be a pretty substantial economic boon to the area, and I think much more importantly, that this is a process that's well understood, well controlled, very tightly regulated, and it's done very safely in many places around the United States. Real quick, well, plenty of time for Q&A. I would just ask that you hold questions until the end, just so we can get to the presentation. So starting off, just want to hit up front, what exactly is Project Ranger? Project Ranger is the key sort of major effort for Castelion on manufacturing solid rocket motors and ultimately what are called all-up rounds. So that means the whole missile tip to tail. What are we doing? Well, we'll be assembling the all rounds. We'll be taking all the various parts. We'll be assembling those into a finished round. That goes into a DOT and DOD approved shipping container, and then that will be shipped to our customers inside the Department of Defense, Army, Navy, Air Force. We'll be manufacturing solid rocket motors on site. We're going to walk through that process a little bit later, so you'll better understand exactly what that entails. We're going to assemble and test electronic components. So think computers, circuit boards, that sort of thing. And then lastly, we will be doing static firing on site of solid rocket motors. We'll talk a little bit more about that too. Before we understand there's questions about noise, safety, so forth and so on. We'll hit all of that. What are we not doing? So we're not synthesizing ammonium perchlorate, we're not manufacturing chemicals, we're not synthesizing any chemicals on the site. That's important because from an environmental standpoint, a lot of the... Oh, sorry, is this any better? Yes. Sorry about that.
The mumbling.
The extra clear. So we're not synthesizing ammonium perchlorate on site, we're not manufacturing any chemicals on site. We want to emphasize that because a lot of times that's where you have some of the biggest concerns around environmental impact. We'll talk about environmental impacts of what we are doing, but no synthesis, no heavy chemical processes like those on site. In addition, nothing will be launched on site. As we go through the presentation, you'll see a lot of images of flight testing. It's a big part of our engineering approach. No flight testing will be done in Sandoval County or Rio Rancho. The flight testing that we do, there's a handful of private ranges. Spaceport down south is one of them actually, where we're able to do flight testing. And other than that, most of our flight testing now is being done out of DOD, Department of Defense ranges. I'm actually going to head the microphone over to Greg Zappa real quick, who will introduce himself and speak a little bit to the problems that we're trying to solve here.
Hey, good evening, everybody. My name is Greg Zeppler. I am a 31-year Navy veteran, just retired in June, actually. Nuclear-powered submarine officer, commanded USS Norfolk. 22 years of submarine driving before I shifted gears and went into the Navy's acquisition community, which I served in a variety of program manager roles, torpedoes, submarine combat systems, and ultimately the capstone of my Navy career was 4.5 years at the helm of the Navy's Conventional Prompt Strike program, which when coupled with the Army's long-range hypersonic weapon program has delivered the nation its first hypersonic strike missile. So good deep background in all things Navy, nuclear power, torpedoes, and ultimately hypersonic missiles. I want to take 1 minute and make sure that, so first of all, thank you for being with us tonight, and two, to highlight the opportunity that I think it's really vital that every American understand. So I'm excited to be part of Castelion and part of this project because of how much it means to our nation. I've dedicated my whole life to the defense of our country, and here's an opportunity for me to spend the rest of my working life doing the same. Because for about 2.5 decades, while the United States was at war in the global war on terror, keeping the terrorist heads down on behalf of the whole rest of the world, our adversaries got a leg up on us. The Chinese and the Russians and others went off and found any asymmetric approach they could find to cause us a problem as they watched how proficient we were at waging war against our adversaries. And one of the things that they settled on was hypersonic missiles. So what's so asymmetric about a hypersonic missile? Hypersonic at its root just really means 5 times the speed of sound. And frankly, we and our adversaries all have many missiles that go faster than 5 times the speed of sound. But when we talk about it in a military utility context, we really talk about it as that, of course, 5 times the speed of sound, but also flying in the atmosphere, which makes it incredibly maneuverable. And so what you end up with when we talk about hypersonic missiles is a device that flies at a speed and at an altitude, and that altitude delays its detectability. And then with maneuverability that makes it incredibly difficult to defend against. And it turns out that because we were so focused elsewhere in the world, we are now in 3rd place in terms of fielding, testing, prototyping, and fielding hypersonic weapons. The Chinese in particular have at least 10 hypersonic missile, families of hypersonic missiles. And the United States right now has part of one. And so this project, in coordination with all of the other efforts at Castelion and frankly across the Department of Defense, is aimed at solving that challenge. And particularly when you couple it with what you see on this slide, you don't have to go very far to read press articles about what has happened to the defense industry base. Things like missiles cost entirely too much to make. We have, because of after the Cold War, we kind of settled in on exquisite capability. So our things are very good, but we have relatively few of them. So they're expensive. And it takes a really long time to do a development program. When we do them, because they're expensive and they're exquisite, it tends to be very difficult to manufacture them at scale. In other words, in order to have many of them. And Castelion, the reason I came to Castelion after having built the nation's first hypersonic weapon system was because I saw all that in spades. Like I saw the writing on the wall. We are never going to get ahead of the problem and put ourselves in a position where we have a capability that deters our adversaries. Right? I don't want to go to war against the Chinese. I also don't want to have to capitulate to the Chinese and learn to speak Mandarin. So what do we do about that? Well, I went to work for a company like Castelion because they are doing it, right? They are actively testing, they are actively working to deliver hypersonic weapon systems, and they have a deep culturally ingrained focus on affordability and on fielding at scale. And those two things come together, frankly, here, hopefully with your community and with the support of your community members that we will hire to work at our production facility here to solve this conundrum and fix this asymmetry that's developed between us. And so I think the next slide just shows you some of the press articles that you can just Google to learn more. I guess the thing that I haven't covered yet is this. So in the world today, there's been a number of recent conflicts, right? In the Red Sea. We have shot hundreds of SM-2 missiles and vastly depleted our inventory of those. It's very, very difficult to replenish that inventory in a quick way. In the 12-day war between Israel and Iran, the worldwide 25% of the worldwide inventory of THAAD missiles, theater, high altitude, area defense missiles, was expended, according to press reporting. 25% of the entire world inventory in that 12 days. So you can imagine, if we do find ourselves in a conflict with an adversary, how quickly the department's missile inventories are going to be expended. And so we really need to find affordable, scalable missile systems to deliver, to protect the American warfighters. Your sons and daughters, in so many cases, I'm sure, I'm happy to fight. Next slide. I already mentioned China's the lead, and they've fielded about 10. The United States has fielded a part of one battery of the first hypersonic weapon system, And right now, the DoD is spending about $8 billion a year in order to solve this problem. Next slide. And so that brings me back to Castelion, right? So I actually met 2 of the 3 founders back in 2022. And I didn't, to be honest, I didn't remember that meeting until I ran into them again as I was thinking about what my next career would be. We had a short conversation at a conference, and they went off and started a company that exists solely to write at asymmetry, to apply Apollo era, revalidated by SpaceX techniques, using a rapid design, prototyping, and testing sequence empowered by non-traditional sources of supply and a deep focus on affordability and whether or not a specific design can scale to deliver innovation, hypersonic strike capability in volume at a price that the country can afford. And so when I had lots of opportunities coming out of my last job, frankly, it was a no-brainer for me to end up here because this company is tackling many of the problems I saw in the department while I was working there. And so here we are.
Great, thank you, Greg. Just wanted to go through some of that to provide a little bit of context about why we're tackling these problems, what we're doing, why it matters. As Greg was saying, we'll talk about it a little bit more, but these are key priorities at the very highest levels of the Department of Defense and in the armed services. And you know, our unofficial company motto is deterrence works, or peace through deterrence. The reality is that we have very high conviction, and the armed forces obviously exist in order to ensure that we can prevent war through deterrence. And our best way of making deterrence effective is ensuring that the United States and our allies, our armed forces, are the best equipped in the world. To that end, a little bit of background on Castelion specifically. As Greg was alluding to, we're a pretty new company. We were founded in 2022. However, we're one, moving very quickly, and number 2, although the company is new, we're comprised of industry veterans, folks who have spent their whole careers in aerospace. A number of them are on stage with us right now. So I'll run through these real quick, but one of my co-founders, our CEO, Brian Kargas, he was the program architect for what's now called Starshield, which is a SpaceX satellite constellation that is sold to and operated by the US government. Sean Pitt is our COO. He was in charge of selling Falcon 9 launches, so space launches, to US partners and allies on the continent of Europe. So that's communication satellites and national security satellites. And then looking across the engineering team, we worked a lot with Jacob Swears when we were at SpaceX. He's our chief engineer. He was in charge of developing host satellite for Starshield. Satya, we also worked with a lot at SpaceX, and he was in charge of one of the largest contracts, largest programs at Starshield. I was also instrumental in working on in-space laser comms, so satellite-to-satellite communications. David Ferguson spent 12 years at SpaceX as well. I should mention, you'll hear SpaceX quite a lot. A large proportion of the company is at SpaceX. We've carried a lot of those design principles over, but we also have quite a few folks who came out of the military or come from the primes, the Lockheeds of the world. But Ferg actually designed the Crew Dragon flight computer. So the flight computer on the Crew Dragon spacecraft that takes the astronauts to the International Space Station that SpaceX operates. Ferg designed that computer. He was also instrumental on the Starlink and Starshield flight computers. Tegan Count heads up secret development. He spent 20 years at Raytheon and L3 Mustang. So stalwarts of the defense industry, deep expertise, deep experience developing secret technology. Paul Perry was an early employee and head of mechanical engineering at a company called Zipline, which is the world's largest drone delivery company. They have these huge streams of drone aircraft that deliver medical supplies in Africa. Then Bobby Canario, who's on stage with us, spent 12 years at SpaceX as well, led major manufacturing teams on both the Crew Dragon spacecraft and the Falcon 9 rocket. We'll just hit a couple on here, but other folks, Greg introduced himself. We'll also have Alex on stage with us. Until recently at Sandia National Lab and working with us on program development. One of our first hires here in New Mexico, which we're really excited about. Garth Blakely up top was a 2-time Top Gun instructor and Navy pilot. Helps head up our Navy programs. And then down at the bottom, Dr. Mike Griffin and Lisa Porter. Mike Griffin was actually Undersecretary of Defense for our DT&E in prior administration. And he was also a former NASA administrator. So after the Space Shuttle Columbia disaster in 2003, Mike Griffin was brought into NASA to head up the accident investigation and handle the return to flight for Space Shuttle. Lisa Porter was his deputy at the Pentagon. So those two are advisors to the company, but they've been advisors since the beginning. They're really prominent figures and kind of instrumental in the hypersonic community. So very excited to have their support as well. Just want to give you a sense of some of the folks that we have assembled on the Castelion team. And then in terms of locations, our headquarters is in Torrance, California. We also have a solid rocket motor propellant development site in Midland, Texas. Our Seeker team is based out of Allen, Texas, which is a Dallas suburb. And then we have a team in the DC area handling programs. And then obviously what we're checking here about today is Project Ranger and the possibility of a scale production site here in New Mexico. I'll speak on this briefly. I just want to cover, and Greg was alluding to this, I just want to cover our engineering process, just to sort of cover why are we able to move quickly, why are we able to outmaneuver some of the stalwarts of the industry, and why are we able to scale into manufacturing safely really quickly. There's basically 3 pillars. The first one is hardware-rich rapid iteration. Basically what that means is get to hardware as quickly as you can, test it as early as you can, then iterate and make a new design as fast as you can. Swears, our chief engineer, always says the first thing you're going to build is going to be wrong. The sooner you build it, the faster you find out the ways that you're wrong. So what we do here is, you can see all the flight testing, which we will not be doing in Sandoval County or in Rio Rancho. But we get to flight testing early, we get to static firing early. We learn a lot about how to build these vehicles, which means that this goes into design for manufacture. We learn how to build them effectively and cost effectively. And it also means we get a ton of practice in how to build them, and we're able to iterate on the manufacturing system, so we learn how to build them both efficiently and safely. Lastly, we're historically, or at least recently, has not been the case with aerospace, but we're not afraid to vertically integrate. We do a lot of things ourselves, we do a lot of designs ourselves, if we're able to drive schedule and drive development in the right direction. And this is, I'll go on to the next slide, really sort of been instrumental in what we've been doing. Along the top, that displays a handful of the contracts that we've been awarded thus far. We have 2 very substantial contracts that unfortunately we cannot announce just yet. Hopefully we will announce them very soon once the government is back in action. But those are a multiple of all of our prior contracts combined. So we have active contracts with the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, Missile Defense Agency, some very substantial contracts, and I would say a lot of focus on delivering the capabilities that we're developing at the very highest levels of government, which is really exciting, but which is also why we're so focused on executing right now on Project Ranger. Across the bottom, I'll also say Castelion is a venture capital-backed defense technology company. So we've raised several rounds of financing. All told, we've raised about $335 million in equity so far. And that equity has been raised by, frankly, blue chip investors. So these are some of the largest investors in the world. They have a track record of building really successful companies. We're excited because there's a lot of conviction and a lot of excitement. We give them the same story that we gave you folks about the missile market. They have depth of expertise and they sort of understand what the state of play is. And there is a lot of enthusiasm from those investors and those communities in building new defense capabilities, equipping the American warfighter, and we're very excited to be on the leading edge of that. Getting down to brass tacks, let's talk a little bit more about the site and what we'll be doing here. So just to orient everyone, this is an old diagram of a solid rocket motor. Solid rocket motors are the standard by far and away most common rocket motor that is used in all of U.S. Tactical weapons. And the reason that they're so commonly used is a bunch of reasons, but the key ones are, one, they're storable. So you can keep them in a variety of environments for a long time. You can heat them, cool them, humidity, dry, whatever it might be, and they'll still function. So obviously that's a great value for the military. Another thing that's really key, though, is they are also very stable. So if we think about our customer, one of our customers is the Navy, right? If you have a Navy ship or an aircraft carrier, that vessel is going to be loaded with many, many, many solid rocket motors and munitions. People are going to be working next to them. We're going to talk a little bit later about insensitive munitions testing and how the Navy gets comfortable that all these weapons are very safe to be around, very safe to handle. But one of the key points with solid rocket motors is they are not volatile in the way that liquid rocket propellants are. They're actually very, very hard to set off. They're very stable. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but it's one of the key advantages to them. It's a big part of why the military uses them. In terms of what the process is, so I mentioned earlier, we're going to be making solid rocket motors on the production site, on the Project Ranger site. What does that actually mean? Well, basically it means that we take a few different classes of ingredients. You can see the ingredients on the left. So there's a variety of inert propellant materials, some liquid, some solids. Many of those are inert. Some of those ingredients are literally food additives. Some are used in cosmetics. Some of them are more hazardous, and we have safe handling procedures for them that we're going to talk about a little bit later. Then you have ammonium perchlorate. That's a powder. It's used in the gas generators and in the airbags. Aluminum, we use aluminum powder, but everyone's pretty familiar with aluminum. So we take those ingredients that we stored on site, and we take them to a mixed building, separate building. And honestly, the process is actually, it sounds silly, but it's a lot like baking. You add dry ingredients and wet ingredients in certain ratios. The mix equipment that we have, it's a very large mixer, but in principle, it's actually not really different from the mixer that would be used in the food or baking industry. So you mix all these ingredients together into a slurry. Once you have that slurry, you cast the slurry into the motor cases. The motor cases are just metal tubes. And then you hold those for a number of days at relatively low temperature to cure them. That means the liquid solidifies. So you cast the slurry solidifies. Now you have a finished rocket motor. We take that to another area, and we take all the rest of the sub-assemblies and the piece parts, and we integrate all that together into what's called an all-up round, into the finished missile. That goes into its own specialized shipping container. That design gets reviewed by the Department of Defense and the Department of Transportation. It has to pass pretty extensive testing, and then it's shipped off to our customers inside the Department of Defense, shipped on full sample. In terms of why Rio Rancho, so there's a few things that we knew that we needed, the things that would really be critical to Project Ranger. The first and most important, honestly, is talent. And we say exceptional talent, but it's also patriotic talent, and I say that word advisedly. We need the right skills, but we also want people that understand the mission, understand the importance of national security, and are willing and able and excited to work on a project like Project Ranger. There's other parts of the country, I won't call out any of them, but there's other places where you might have depth of technical skills, but it's seen as less appealing to work on critical national security technologies. We think this area with Kirtland Air Force Base, strong veteran community, both Los Alamos and Sandia National Labs, and Sandia is sort of the national expert in hypersonics. We have that talent here. We're really excited about the people that we're going to be able to hire to work on we call it Prop Site 2 internally, on Project Ranger. Second, access to electric and internet utilities. It is a critical need for the United States to get these into production expeditiously. So being near utilities is a critical need for us. We've seen really good progress on that with local utilities and providers. We're working that process right now at Castelion's expense. All that deployment will be at our own expense. And then lastly, we need a large contiguous land area, and that large contiguous land area needs to be close enough to 1 and 2. In Section 36, where we're looking, serves that purpose really, really well. The thing that we don't need is large amounts of water. So we do not use any processed water in the production of solid rocket motors or assembly. No water goes into any of the inputs. We're not using large quantities of it. Our internal estimates are it should be the equivalent to roughly 50 typical households in the area. The water usage is really just potable water. So it's bathrooms and sinks for the employees. Nothing is going into the industrial process. So we know we don't have strong water needs, and one of the things that's a consideration for us here is since we don't really need water, and obviously it's a major consideration for you folks, it matches up really well, but obviously the key priority here is getting the right folks. In terms of what we'll be doing, so we'll be making major investments in Project Ranger, the job site 2. This will be the scale production site. We'll be adding a lot of additional capabilities and capacity over time, which we're really excited about. And that means that we are planning to invest over $100 million in the first year. We are aiming to invest hundreds of millions of dollars more in the years to follow. In addition, we're committed to at least 300 jobs by year 5 of the project, so 5 years from effectively now, a couple months from now. And I do want to emphasize, for those jobs, everyone at Castelion has full benefits. Everyone is an owner. Everyone gets shares as part of their compensation, from the most junior technician to the most senior member of the engineering team. Everybody gets a stake in the company. We think that's really, really important. Those will be split roughly 50% engineering roles and roughly 50% skilled touch labor roles, technician type roles. We expect the average compensation across those jobs to be around $100,000 per year. And I keep talking about talent. I didn't emphasize it enough. One part here is local university system, New Mexico Tech, UNM, local community college system really impressed us. So partner with them, making investments in building STEM skills, really a commitment that we want to make to the local community, and obviously something that's hugely important. Getting into the site itself, I think one of the common questions is, well, actually let's take a look. There's the Project Ranger site outlined in white. It's about 3 miles, 2.8 miles from Northern Meadows, at the edge of it, from the edge of the site to the edge of the site. It's about 2.2 miles to Commuter Crossing, and then up there, that's the Rio Rancho substation. It's about 2.5 miles. We've got some questions. Is that awfully close? So we did do a little bit of homework. Obviously, we have sort of experts in deep relationships across industry, so we just want to look at a few case studies of the other similar facilities that are located around the United States. So this is a facility that makes munitions in West Virginia. It's about 1.2 miles from its local community. Up north, you can't see it real well, but across the river there, it's about 900 feet from the nearest process building to the nearest home. Similarly, if we look at this location in Castelion County, Arkansas, it's about half a mile from a very large process building to a church. Here over in Camden, it's about 1 mile from munitions storage facilities to a college campus as well as student housing. And then at the Promontory facility, it's about 1 mile from the edge of the facility to the local community. So if you benchmark all of that, you'll find the Project Ranger site is actually quite far away relative to sort of what's typical for solid rocket motor facilities. We'll talk a little bit more about on-site safety, but just as a general parameter of where it's located, it is actually, again, relative to everything else out there, it is quite far away from any inhabited buildings, any residences, community members. The other thing, we did a bunch of digging. We can't find any examples in the modern era of anyone in the community, anyone outside the perimeter being harmed in any incident on a comparable facility. So we can't find any record of anyone who's near a solid rocket facility where there was an incident and someone in the community was harmed, which obviously is really important. Getting into the details of site safety. So first of all, we do have a whole bevy of regulations that govern everything that we are doing. There's a whole bunch of New Mexico building and fire codes, electrical and mechanical codes. Those are state regs, although they're sort of based on the International Fire Code in a lot of cases. And those are regulated by the Construction Industries Division, so New Mexico CID. We've already had a lot of meetings with them. We'll be meeting with them later this week, as a matter of fact, going over all the plans in detail, making sure that everything that we're doing is safe, compliant, squared away. In addition, you'll hear a lot about DOD 4145, that fifth line down. This is a very important and very specific set of regulations. So this is a very strict set of Department of Defense regulations that govern production and testing of energetic materials, which is what we'll be doing on this site. So that is really important because that sets everything from training and procedures and rules and safety requirements to the nature and very detailed parameters of how the process equipment is designed and built. We have to be fully compliant with. And then we'll talk more about the site layout in a moment. But it also governs site layout and it prescribes distances between all the buildings and between the buildings and the public, so that if there is an incident, it ensures that there's no propagation and it ensures that the public remains safe, which is why we haven't seen any effect on the public in those other facilities. And then, of course, some additional points on both environmental protection, cultural resources, and some other Department of Defense regs. So general maintenance, we'll look at the site map in just a second. I was talking about when you look at the site map, you're going to find it's a very big site. Buildings are very spaced out. That's very intentional. That's actually required by DOD 4145. It's a big part of, you'll hear me say belt and suspenders a whole lot. The belt will be a lot of process and equipment safeguards to ensure that all this can be done safely. And then the suspenders are, if there is an incident, you have all these setback distances so that folks on the facility and members of the public are all safe. In addition, part of 4145 is remote operation of any hazardous equipment. So we're operating the mixers, for example. The people operating those mixers, Castelion employees, are going to be in a separate control room that's a secure area a distance away, so that, once again, obviously protect members of the public, but also ensure safety of all the employees who are on site. Also want to mention that in a number of different places, we do have earthen berms between the buildings, so if there's an incident to prevent propagation between the buildings, that's kind of its own belt and suspenders. You go beyond the setback distances. And then we also have a full perimeter fence and 24/7 security, so that ensures that there's very much reduced risk of intrusion, and it's impossible for the general public to accidentally find themselves somewhere that they shouldn't be. And here's a layout of the site. Quite a large site. As you can see, it's about 2 miles wide. It's about 1 mile north-south. Just to give you a little bit of perspective on top of those distances, that building Z down there, that's an inert building, but that building alone is about 200,000 square feet. So it's a very sizable site, and the spacing on the buildings, all of that is set, regulated, certified under very stringent rules. Those 4145 rules I was talking about earlier. Another point, we have these inhabited building arcs. This is part of 4145. So you'll see all these buildings have these hazard arcs drawn around them. And you'll see that none of them overlap the red lines which are the second perimeter. So these are sort of the maximum distances that you have meaningful risk and you have a worst case scenario inside those buildings. This is drawn, it's required to be drawn, so that none of those arcs cross the perimeter fence. It's designed to be drawn so that if there is an incident, this is how you make sure that there's no risk to the public, there's no risk to something else being blown apart or anything like that. I'll also mention we've been conservative in sizing those arcs and conservative in our assumptions of how much energetic material will be on site. We all will be spending a lot of time on this facility. This is our key facility as a company. Some of us will be moving out here. Many members of the community will be working at this facility. All of this is required by very stringent rules, but we are also very highly motivated for us, for employees, as good neighbors, as members of the community, to do all of this right and to be conservative in all of our safety assumptions. And then there's a rendering of what the site will look like, sans fence. Static fire testing. This is one thing that we will be doing on site. There's an image of it from our site in Midland. So this means that inside the structure, you rig up the solid rocket motor with a number of different sensors. You're collecting data, and then with the rocket motor held down and stationary, you fire the motor to collect data. You get a plume, in that case, roughly 30 feet long, but because of all the hazard hours you folks saw earlier, it is well set back from any other buildings or from the public. In terms of noise, we expect it will generate roughly the same amount of noise as a vacuum cleaner if you're outside in northern meadows. Those static fire tests typically take about 20 seconds. We do about 30 seconds to be a little bit conservative there. Roughly vacuum cleaner if you're outdoors, level noise in northern meadows for 30 seconds at a time. Those tests will be conducted during working hours. It will not be setting these off in the middle of the night or anything like that. And I might add, the byproducts of this test, chemical inputs and outputs, we've worked with the Mexico Environmental Department on. All of these are very well understood. We have experts that have drilled down into it. There's nothing in the firing process that poses any short-term or long-term risk to the public. In terms of waste management and spill prevention, this is very important, obviously. So, once again, belt and suspenders. The belt in this case, the first line of defense is sort of two things. The first is training of personnel. Everyone needs to know what you do if there is a spill. Everyone needs to know exactly how you are supposed to manage any sensitive or hazardous chemicals. Number two is built-in containment systems in all the buildings to prevent any spills from migrating into the ground. Now, just to be clear, anything that we're doing with chemicals is going to be on a concrete pad with containment systems inside the building by trained personnel. We're not going to be opening chemicals out in open air or anything like that. So this is all pretty tightly controlled. I'm sorry?
We're not buying that.
Oh, well, I'm happy to take a question from you a little later. This stuff is actually all regulated by both the state and the federal government. So if we don't do this, we will land ourselves in pretty severe trouble. Training, engineering, that's your first line of defense. And then your second is ensuring that you have spill mitigation procedures in place so that if there is a spill, spill kits everywhere, everyone knows what they're supposed to do. You have environmental health and safety teams on site, so if there is a spill, they know exactly how to respond to it. That is extremely important, and those are kind of both of your lines of defense there. In terms of waste, we don't generate a tremendous amount of waste, but all the waste that we do generate is going to be aggregated, and there are contractors out there that specialize in disposing of exactly this kind of waste. So we'll aggregate it together, hand it off to a regulated licensed contractor. They will take it off-site to a controlled area for disposal of that waste. None of it is being burned on site, none of it is going to the local landfill or anything like that. Once again, that's by regulation, by statute. Patrick, would you like to speak to the covariance real quick?
Hey everybody, I'll introduce myself really quick. I'm Patrick Hotchkiss, I'm the Director of Manufacturing. Just a quick background on me, I've spent 10 years in the manufacturing industry, working on everything from cars, modular housing, to I was at SpaceX for a while, and now I'm working in the defense industry, so a little bit all over the place. I know there's been some questions about a code variance in terms of fire sprinklers in the community, so I want to make sure we address that. So, we've reviewed the details of this particular variance with city, state, and county fire officials, in addition to the Construction Industries Division, who's responsible for the code in this particular area that we're looking to build. And we have gotten a variance approved to not install fire sprinklers and hydrants in our facility. Now, the reason for that is because the materials that we are working with react with water. So, and I'll add, before I get into the exact materials, the International Fire Code allows for this specifically. If you dive into the International Fire Code, it calls out an exemption for any facility that is working with ammonium perchlorate to manufacture solid rocket motors. So this isn't something that hasn't been done before. This is like a relatively well understood process. The ammonium perchlorate that we're working with, if there were to have sprinklers go off onto that ammonium perchlorate can dissolve in water. We obviously do not want that. We do not want any threat to the groundwater in the area, so we don't want sprinklers in the building to allow that to migrate into the soil. And aluminum powder also reacts with water to generate flammable hydrogen gas. So if you were to spray a bunch of aluminum powder with water, you could generate a worse problem in the case of an incident on site. So instead of installing fire sprinklers and hydrants, what we are doing is installing robust fire detection systems in all of our facilities that handle these hazardous materials. So heat sensors, smoke sensors, so that way our on-site security team and the local fire department is aware if there's a problem that happens on site. There's also no fire sprinkler requirements in DOD 4145, that governing document we talked about, for this specific reason. And it actually forbids firefighters from fighting fires involving these materials because of the risks to their lives and the environment around. So what we want to make sure we do in the case that there is an incident is get away from the facility, let it do its thing, and prevent the fire from spreading. That way we present the least risk to the community in the event of an incident.
Thank you. Also, I'm watching time. I want to reserve as much time as possible for Q&A, so I'm going to try to pick up the pace slightly here as we walk through some additional slides. We do want to hit one thing very important head on. I think some of you probably saw there was an incident at the North Promontory Point facility in April of 2025, earlier this year. So this was a process that we actually will not be doing. It's part of the process of synthesizing EP. We do not do that. We're not planning to do that. It's debatably a more hazardous process. And our understanding is that this was a process safety issue that ultimately caused the fire. And ultimately the building, you can see it, I don't know how well you can see, but the building did explode after the fire, or in the course of the fire. So, going back to belt and suspenders, obviously this is a failure of the belt. This is not what should not happen. Proper processes should prevent this. However, it did happen, and this is where the suspenders come in. There were no injuries as a result of the incident. And if we take a look at the next image, you'll see, I don't know how well you can see it, I'm sorry, but in the bottom right, you'll see there's a building about 120 feet away with storage in its yard. That building was entirely undamaged, and then there's another building 350 feet away that was undamaged by the explosion. So going back to the setback distances, we just wanted to show what the site looks like with that 120-foot arc around it. Again, it's a very big site. At the Northwood site, there was a building and storage 120 feet away that was entirely unharmed. If you look at 120 feet around us, you have quite a lot of margin in there, which is good. It's exactly what we're aiming for. I'll hit transportation as well, because obviously this is a key topic. Case study for this is actually a sort of infamous incident in U.S. military history called the Forrestal incident. So this was during the Vietnam War. There was an accident on board USS Forrestal, an aircraft carrier, that ended up igniting a jet fuel fire that set off a number of antiquated, they've not gone through the testing regime that was ultimately implemented, set off a number of bombs from the Korean War, terrible accident. Over 100 sailors were killed, nearly sank the ship. And the reason this is so important is the Navy looked at this incident and said, never again. We have to do whatever it takes to make sure that this kind of accident, and that is the genesis of incident emissions testing. So all of the all-arounds that we are developing in manufacturing will need to be held to a standard where the armed forces can be confident, because these things are going on ships, they're going into ammunition magazines and armed, they can be confident that even in pretty extreme situations, they're not going to cook off and injure or kill some of the sailors that are in the area. So just for perspective, the kind of testing we have to do, we have to take, this is a finished missile, we have to take it and burn it with jet fuel to simulate a fire, simulate actually something like what happened at Forrestal. We have to do a slow heating scenario, simulates fire on board a truck. We have to shoot it with 50 caliber rounds. We have to hit it with high velocity shrapnel to simulate impact from enemy munitions. We have to detonate other munitions at close range to show that there won't be chain reaction. We have to shoot it with a shaped charge jet, so that's the sort of hit that you get from an anti-tank rocket, and ensure that it's not going to go off an anti-tank rocket. It's an RPG. And then you also have to drop it from a tower from 40 feet high, from a 40-foot height, and demonstrate you can survive all these things without cooking off and causing a threat to people in the area. So, that is a very good point. None of that testing will be done in Rio Rancho or Sandoval County. We're not doing any insensitive munitions testing as part of Project Ranger. Not licensed to move it. I'm very sorry for anyone who wanted to. Do you have anything to add on that, Greg? Or?
No, I think, no, really well said. So it turns out back in 1991, Midshipman Zeller was on board the USS Forrestal for the Mediterranean. And Andrew's story that this is a milestone event in the Navy is 100% true, because even as a midshipman out there for 3 weeks, we got sat down and talked about that event and what it meant to me. It wasn't until I was a program manager that I truly appreciated the changes that were made in things like the weapons system explosive safety review board, which is a panel of experts in munitions that we will have to take our designs and brief them through to prove that we followed all the appropriate practices to make sure our munitions are insensitive. In other words, a stray electron can't cause a warhead or to explode, or the solid rocket motor to ignite. There are many years of design experience that have led to very safe weapons designs, which is why I didn't know it then, but when I was a department head sleeping right next to a solid rocket motor, 80-inch round, 40-foot tall solid rocket motor, I didn't think anything about it, just because of the learning that came out of that.
Thank you. So that covers everything that will be, that covers the all-arounds that will be leading our facility. Very insensitive, very extensive testing, extremely difficult to set off an accident. The other consideration, of course, is stuff coming into the facility, the bulk of which will be ammonium perchlorate. So ammonium perchlorate is the oxidizer that goes into solid rock compound. This also has its own pretty strict set of transportation requirements. You can see some of them. Some of them there. We get it directly from the manufacturer, double wrapped in plastic bags, drop tested, pressure tested, and then packed into steel drums, which are also drop, leak, fire tested. In addition, AP, ammonium perchlorate, is not very easy to ignite on its own. We checked the manufacturer, we did some digging ourselves. We can't find any instances of the ignition event in transportation. So there's nothing we could find of a situation where there was a vehicle accident or something like that, and the AP ended up igniting because it's inherently hard to ignite into the packaging standards here. Going back to what I was saying earlier about, we completely understand this stuff sounds very scary because you don't see it every day, right? Or you don't hear about it, or you don't think about it every day. Trumpet missiles sounds really distressing until you understand sort of the testing that goes into it. Same thing with AP. What's funny is we also, you end up with a bias sort of in favor of things you see all the time might be more dangerous. So we see gas trucks all the time. Any local gas station has one showing up a couple times a day. In reality, a gasoline tanker has 60 times as much energy as a truck full of all rounds, and 25 times as much energy as a truck full of ammonium perchlorate. And it is also much easier to ignite. So you see them all the time, so it doesn't seem scary because you're used to it, but the reality is there's a lot more hazard in a gasoline tanker or in a propane truck than there is in a lot of the vehicles that we find in our facility. And then lastly, this is the route into and out of the Project Ranger facility. We've done a traffic study on this, done a lot of sort of detailed dive into best routes in and out. I know there have been some questions about this. It does pass by Cleveland High School. The reason that we've gotten comfortable with this as a company after doing a lot of work on it, the message that we have for all you folks is it is passing by that school for sort of
a very short period. It's a short period of drive, so okay, that's a low likelihood, but let's be conservative. But if you multiply that probability by the number of safeguards that are in place on both ammonium perchlorate and the alpha rounds, we basically can't find any instances in modern history of an accident like that happening. It's sort of the multiplication of those two events. It is infinitesimally unlikely of an accident occurring. And I would say after having been quite a lot of work on it, we feel very confident in the route safety and sort of historical precedents around it. Well, I'm sorry, I've gone a little bit over time now, but hopefully that was helpful. We'd love to take all questions for as long as we can go.
Coming right to you.
Hello. First of all, thank you for the presentation. Two main questions for me. So for our power grid, you were saying one of the electrical, really a lot more electrical. Is there something in place to get a better power grid? I can tell you for myself, like my electric bill has doubled recently. No reason at all. So that's concern number one. Concern number two is for the ammonium perchlorate. You talked about the possibility of some contamination, but only at certain stages, not all stages. So if you could touch upon that as well.
We actually have a case study on the second question, so Bryce is going to pull that up real quick, so I wasn't ignoring you. On your first question, we're actually not a heavy power user either. We'll have one line coming in working on this, we're paying for it. We'll have a feeder line coming in from the nearby substation. We use a lot less electricity than say data center. I don't know if I can security quote number of megawatts, but it's I think high single digit to very low power. So not a heavy power user. In terms of oh please.
Yeah. Hey everyone, I'm Bryce. I'm our site development manager here, and just a little bit of info on power too. We're not adding any new major infrastructure. The utility already has enough power to serve us, so in terms of new infrastructure that may be seen on local bills, I'm not seeing anything there. This is all existing things, and we're putting the bill, the power, all of our new power infrastructure as well.
Oh, I'm going to answer this gentleman's second question real quick, if that's okay. Thank you. So on your second question with AP in the water, this is something that is actually one. There have been a lot of regulations that govern it that came about kind of late during the Cold War era, and something that we're really vigilant about. The case study for this is this frankly terrible incident in Redlands. When we look at it, we're sort of shocked that this was ever allowed. This happened in the 1960s and the early 1970s. I don't know how well you can see the picture, but you'll see streaks of blue all over the map. Those blue areas are collect ponds. So straight from the CDC report, they were disposing of hazardous waste by open burning, discharge into evaporation and settling ponds, and then inadvertent dumping. And then they also discharge hazardous waste, including perchlorate, which entered the groundwater. This is horrendous. This would never be allowed today by any of the regulations. This is pre-EPA. This is pre a whole host of regs and laws that preclude this. It's kind of shocking to us that this was ever permitted or considered acceptable. You can't put EP into water and let it leach into the ground. That's sort of the number one no-no. And we're very vigilant about this because, frankly, because of this case study. There's a lot of steps in place, a lot of procedures. It's a little like the Forestall fire. You have these lessons learned from mistakes in the past. A lot is built up on procedures and requirements to ensure that nothing like this happens. It's part of why soil containment is so important, concrete pads and so forth. Is that helpful? Great.
As I was doing research on this particular incident, I actually found out at the water table I grew up was also partially contaminated with this because of the same thing. So, like, our commitment to you guys is that we will make sure that all of our process controls are in place that don't allow for this type of thing to happen at this facility, not only because of like personal experience, right, but because of our relationship to you guys as a member of the community. So it's very important to us that this does not happen and we put all the controls in place.
Next question, please.
Thank you, and thank you for all the information that we can grasp. I have three main questions, and I'd like it answered. If so, who and how? And if not, why not? First question is, do you have a meteorologist in your staff that will be available as you are building, constructing? Because we all know here in New Mexico, the winds, the weather can change in a moment, and it makes a huge difference on everything. Second part is an environmentalist. I don't know what they're called, an environmental person. Someone can follow up if they know more than me, who is on staff, employed by you, or maybe outside of you, to come on board, who knows what they're doing, to find out, indeed, all of that. Third one, somebody from the USGS on site when you're building, because it would have to do with, it looks like you've done a great deal of work for inside the buildings, et cetera, but what about outside? Just in case of the ifs that you have mentioned, and you provided many case studies that are the boo-boos you're not going to repeat. But I think you get my gist. So those three things I'm interested to know.
No problem. So on the first one, meteorologist. We don't have any plans during construction. However, as soon as the facility is operational, one of the considerations for any facility like this is weather. One of the recommendations that we got, sorry, I didn't even mention it, but there was a safety analysis, a safety study done by Sandoval National Lab. That was also peer reviewed by Los Alamos. They had some recommendations in there related to lightning protection and to a ground potential monitoring system, which is another means of monitoring both static risk because of weather conditions and lightning risk. So anytime we're doing a test operation, it'll be required. We have a whole long list of pre-test flight ops and checklists that we have to go down. Part of that will be a weather consideration, and then we'll have active monitoring for weather and static, so that if there is any risk of a lightning storm, or even if it's too dry, and there's an increased risk of electrostatic discharge, that will go into our plans and affect facility operations. So not meteorologists per se, but all those procedures that kind of match it. On environmentalists, we will not have an on-staff environmentalist, but we will have multiple people focused on environmental health and safety. So their remit will both be safety of the public and safety of personnel on site, and they will also be focused on compliance with all environmental regulations, and we will of course be subject to regulatory review of all of that. So we'll have at least 2 people on site whose sole job is making sure that all of that is done. In terms of geology, we're not planning to have a geologist on site, but we've done geotechnical work across the entire site. We feel very confident in the foundations and site details. And we've also done an evaluation of seismic risk, and we'll be building all the structures on site to match the level of seismic risk in the area to make sure that there's an earthquake. We will be I want to say immune, but we'll be secure against damage.
And considering that even environmental is spoke about inside the building and around here, I guess I'm speaking about everything around outside, even though you say everything is contained, as you go through the way, or, oh gee, that barrel really was tested. You mean it exploded? Oh, it was on the way on that road that was supposed to be okay to not be that accident? I guess those are my concerns.
Gotcha. So I think for on-site, it sounds like we're aligned there. The only other thing I would add for some of those process missteps and whatnot, one of the things that's really critical for us is our manufacturing systems we electronically track the location, status, level of testing of all the materials on site. So if something is where it is not supposed to be, your barcode scanners will know where it's going, and we'll be able to detect if there's an issue. And we'll also be testing as things come in. In terms of what if there is an event that affects the area outside of the site, that is something that we need to, I would say it's a couple of things. First is having procedures in place, working with first responders for immediate crisis response, of course. Let's say, heaven forbid, there's a spill just outside the gate or something like that. We've already partnered with, we have recurring meetings with Rio Rancho City Fire, County Fire, State Fire. We'll partner with all the first responders, so we have a procedure for human safety. And then the immediate follow-up, which is both the right thing to do and which will be required, is to engage. I mentioned earlier there's companies that specialize in waste disposal. A lot of those same companies also specialize in environmental remediation. Come in, hey, there is this spill. What do we need to do to make sure that there's no long-term impact? And we're on the hook to do that. No problem.
All right, real quick, can you go to the slide that had the route for me, please?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, just go on.
Yeah, so before we jump into that too, I just real quickly, there are so many hands going up, so we just want to make sure that everybody's questions are answered. So just be cognizant of that. We just want to make sure that everybody. So we have this gentleman here next. We have this nice lady over here. We have a couple over here. So we just are going to try to get through as many as we can. We have this room till about 8:15, so we just want to make sure everybody has. Well, I haven't seen your hand on that. So yeah. We'll get to you.
All right, thank you. So just for my sake, because I'm really bad with maps, what road is that specifically?
That's the Sandoval County.
Okay. So one curiosity I had, you mentioned high school, and that was one potential safety issue, right?
I would say that we've done a lot of analysis. We think that there is not a safety issue, but we also understand what concerned about it, so we want to address it.
Okay. Did you also do the hospital that's also on Paseo?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I specifically called out the high school just because I've personally gotten a couple questions about it, but we did the same look at the hospital, yes.
Thank you. And then my other question. So according to the slide, you said DOD 41, 45, 26.
Yep.
Firefighters are not allowed to respond to a fire with explosive materials or something like that, correct?
They're not allowed to fight the fire. What we would do is we have emergency plans in place. We have folks on site who are trained in the emergency plan. We do training and briefing in advance with all local first responders. So they would come to the site. They would help contain the fire. They wouldn't fight the fire directly.
Okay, so my question for that specifically would be, worst case scenario, the entire site goes up in flames. What about our Northern Meadows community? Since we're only 3 miles away, are we going to be forced to just take all of that, who knows what's going to be burning, and just say, sorry, we can't even go near the site, so we can't put it out? So what are you going to do for Northern Meadows specifically in that sort of scenario?
Very good question. So the first one is, I just want to emphasize the whole point of 41, 45 is that sort of scenario where you have multiple buildings going on is the whole set of regulations is designed to prevent that from happening. It isn't just the setback distances. We'll have on-site firefighting capabilities. It's fire breaking in all our buildings and in a perimeter around the buildings. So that'll help prevent the propagation. We don't think that any event that you've outlined is really possible, but as part of the Sandia safety analysis, there is also an ask to do a plume study, which is currently underway. So we'll evaluate, hey, if there is a fire, what are the impacts on that? What should we do? What are the remediations that we would be on the look for?
One quick follow-up.
Sure.
Will that plume study be publicly available?
I believe the key results will be, yes. I don't know if the entire text will be, but the key outcomes will be, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thanks for your presentation. A couple of questions. So you guys have a lot of policy and governance and requirements that dictate your operational execution. There are some critical things regarding some of the DODIs that you guys talked about that are critical for your manufacturing process. Have you guys considered the infrastructure and the systems that are critical to your day-to-day manufacturer and what type of impacts that are going to have not only on the community, but in your distribution supply chain as well? And the other question I would have, you had mentioned China in some of these conversations. One of the things that we're concerned about in some of the things that I'm working on personally is your employers or your employees. What is your vetting process that's going to occur, because we have national laboratories here, we have a lot of things going on that are of interest to our adversaries. What are you guys going to do to make sure that you don't have an insider threat on the things that are absolutely critical to not only your facility, but national security as well?
That is one of our absolutely critical concerns. That is something that's top of mind for us every day. So I think everyone in this room has worked at some point. A lot of us work on classified programs at SpaceX and our cleared folks. There's a lot of guidance out these days on how to manage and protect against insider threats, safeguarding sensitive information. I will tell you that for our part, we've already had multiple meetings with counterintelligence agencies, both in the Los Angeles area and in the Albuquerque area. We've had multiple meetings with Albuquerque FBI. We'll be meeting with them this week. This is really top of mind for us. We will have extensive vetting processes for folks who work on site. And it's part of the reason, look, there are skilled people in really high trust positions. It's part of the reason these are good, well-compensated roles. One other thing, I did get a couple questions. Is there a threat of a foreign actor attacking the site or something like that? Is there a terrorism risk? We have asked multiple agencies inside the federal government that exact question. The feedback that we've gotten from all of them is that they do not think that there is any risk. It's not something they're concerned about. Counterintelligence, they are concerned about, and it's top of mind for us.
Thank you for your presentation. One of the questions that I had is also including with the fire department. Currently, we only have like one fire department out here close to the meadows out here. So would your facility require their own? Or how is Rio Rancho going to go through and ensure that if a crisis does happen within the meadows, that we're going to have enough people to go through and respond to that? My other question that I also have is, are we going to need some type of, like fire protection, insurance, or something that covers if a blast were to go off or something like that? Is that going to raise our taxes?
Good questions. I'll hit number two first. Sorry?
The insurance rates will go.
Yes. We do not think that that is the case. Actually, well, the thing is, the risk that you would get on insurance is coming from fire. All the mitigations we're taking are intended to prevent fire. So we do not think that that is a risk. On your first question with first responders, that's an ongoing discussion with Rio Rancho Fire and County Fire right now. We want to make sure we have the best solutions there. What I would say is, we're working on an emergency response plan. I don't have a complete answer for you other than we do not think it will not require its own fire station. One of the other questions that's come up is, hey, will there be attacks on ambulance resources? Because we're in the wrong direction, is that going to affect response times? One of the things that we're looking at is our security force will also need EMTs. So we're looking at options for self-transport to reduce burden on Rio Rancho. If there is a fire, then the expectation, what we've been talking about so far is a multi-agency response. So it would be city and city and county. Additional resources nearby is required. The key on all of that is, and again, we're already recurring discussions with them. The key is partnering, making sure that, hey, if we're causing an undue burden, that we're working this out in a fair way, and making sure that we are planning, training, working with them to have a good response plan. Is that helpful?
Kind of.
Do you have any follow-ups?
No, that's okay.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Oh, that's right. And if there is any gear that is that the fire department is using that is that's damaged or needs to be replaced as a result of anything that happens on site, we're committed to replacing any of it.
So before you ask your question, there's a lot of people raising their hand. I see all of you. We're going to just just try to get to everybody. So Chad has two people back there, I'll come to you next. And so we're trying to work our way around, so be patient.
Hi, I had a question about the hours of operation and phase two of the timeline is. You mentioned about 300 employees. What about deliveries and of materials and shipping of completed product? And it would, I'm assuming it would use exclusively the sale of con to 550 and then now tie 25 and such for the materials deliveries, and then the employees and hours of operation.
Sure. The plan at this time is to run single shift operations. Now, if demand changes, if, you know, God forbid, we're in a geopolitical crisis, something like that, there are circumstances in which we could foresee running multiple shifts. It's a matter of national necessity, but our base case is running one shift. There will be certain operations on site. Smaller operations will be 24/7. Security will be 24/7. And I expect shipping and receiving to be taking place during business hours. By the way, we were chatting about earlier, in terms of numbers of shipments, like number of outbound shipments of olive grounds, number of inbound shipments of perchlorates, for example, we're talking, I believe it was 1 to 3 trucks per week, depending on which category. So it's not a continuous stream of trucks delivering pass every day. It's a couple of weeks.
Hi, I have 2 questions. First, just want to bring up that New Mexico is steeped in indigenous heritage here, and historically has been excluded from a lot of decision-making process, including, for example, Cochiti Reservoir, which was built without the consent of the community there. So I wanted to first ask, has there been any discussions with the local pueblos here? I know Sierra Pueblo is pretty close here, in getting their consent or approval. And then the next question, Rio Rancho is the largest growing municipality here in New Mexico. So I know you have mentioned about having access to utilities and internet, but are you factoring in the growth and the capacity of this city growing and how that factors into the development of the facilities?
Sure. So on the first one, I would defer a little bit more to the county and state authorities. We were not directly involved. However, we do know that as part of the site process, all of the local tribes and pueblos were consulted with. Perhaps more will address a little bit of that. The only thing I'll say, your second question. And I was also going to mention, we did a full archaeological study across the entire site looking for any potential artifacts or points of archaeological interest.
So, Wayne Johnson, I'm Sandoval County Manager, and we've been working with Castelion on this project. State Land Office, the county, we have been part of working with on tribal consultation across the board. That is an ongoing process. So it hasn't been completed yet, but all of the tribes in New Mexico were notified about this project. We've had meetings, in fact, I've got one tomorrow morning with our friends at Santa Ana, and we'll be going over the project with them. This probably the same slide presentation tomorrow. And we will continue throughout the development process, working with all of our tribal partners in Santa Ana.
And I'm so sorry, your second question, right?
The second question was regarding the capacity because Rio Rancho is the largest.
Oh, right. So, sure. I don't think we would have a serious impact on the internet. I'm not an expert on that, but we're not a heavy user. That should be fine. We talked about water a little bit. We will use power. Like I said, I think high single-digit megawatt. It's not nothing, but in conversations with P&M, it doesn't seem to be a value that concerns them or will have any constraints on future growth. That's our understanding, but I defer to details on that.
Hello. Right there.
Oh, hi, yes.
My name is Eva Schmid. I'm with Common Ground Rising, and I'm working with several communities. I've been contacted by communities all over the globe that deal with rock and motor pollution and communities afterwards. So they are very upset about that this really hasn't had a lot of transparency. We that you have the blessing of Cynthia and Alano in 2005. We still have a lawsuit against them that hasn't been resolved for rocket thunder issues. And the contamination of that aquifer. I don't know what their current status is with you, if they're partners with you, contractors with you, what their status is. But we'd like to know. I have about 35 questions, and you've answered some of them, but it's been vague answers, and we need something more specific. So we need more transparency, we need more meetings to talk about and to dive into this, because this is a very critical issue for our community. So what we would like to do is request the release of all the review documents, the safety plans, the environmental analysis for public scrutiny. Can you put that up on the website? Can you make that available to the public as to what it is that, the facts? We want the facts. We want to know what baseline you did for the aquifer. We want to know what your emissions are going to be. You haven't talked about that yet. So those are the things that, while we've had a presentation that's in general, we need more specific. Thank you very much.
I think a lot of the documents in front of this NDA safety report are either being released or will be released, so you can review all those. I'll just mention real quick on your first one, the rocket motor production, the case study we talked about in Redlands. There are instances from mid-century, from before a lot of these standards came into being, where there was infiltration into the aquifer and communities were harmed. And I think what's really important is that we've learned a lot, the regulations have improved, the EPA didn't even exist in a lot of these things were being done. It's a very different world and a very different set of standards, and I think because of everything that we've learned, and because of those new regs, I understand you're asking for more specificity, but the key points you're getting today, I think illustrate how it can be done safely. I don't know if we can field all of your questions today. I think there's a good ability to get to, but I hope that helps.
So I really not going to go through the last time. That's true. No, I know. We're going to get you because I have 5 more hands and then 20 minutes as well. We're trying to get every single person.
Hello. I have a question about quality control. Where are you testing in New Mexico? If you're not testing the product here in Rio Rancho, where are you taking the product to be tested? And if you have a quality control issue with your product, are you bringing it back here to get reworked? And if you are bringing it back here to get reworked, are there dangers to bringing a product that needs to be reworked, or is that the product back here?
Very good question. So when we're doing flight testing, typically what we'll be doing is we'll be flying that out to Department of Defense ranges. So for example, White Sands Missile Range, Wismar, down in the southern part of the state, we do flight testing there. There's a number of ranges around the United States that specialize in this, and that is where we do our flight testing. With defective products, it will depend on the subsystem. My understanding is in most cases, defective rocket motors will be disposed of rather than reworked. Greg, I don't know if you have any specifics there.
Yeah, generally you don't, with an effective round, one that's dangerous, gets disposed of where it is, right? So we haven't gotten this far yet, but we will. As we develop contracts, as our contracts move from development contracts to production contracts, we will get integrated with like the Air Force, Navy, etc. explosive ordnance disposal units. And so if there was an accident that damaged around and it was ascertained that it wasn't safe to transport, it would be destroyed on site, and we'll have procedures for that development. My last program went through all that. We have those things. If it's just a round that stopped electronically working, for instance, then that might come back here to be repaired. But again, we will have procedures for that. We've done very safely. Nothing has changed in the weapon to make it dangerous. It's changed its insensitive nature. So those scenarios, if the weapon's unsafe, it will go nowhere. And that's fundamentally how the DoD works with weapons like that.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Bevins. I'm a retired Army UAV technician, graduated in high school UAV, 22 years in the Army, and I was the chief of environmental safety and health for ITRA, extensive coastal testing, TTP development, background at White Sands, and many locations around the country. Got a couple questions for you. I understand and appreciate looking at QDRs and having building distance and all, and I'm sure you'll release the DCMA approved site plan for the public. What on the rocket motor and the missile, because I understand you're doing a full-up assembly here, what is the TRL level?
Technology readiness level. So, moving smartly towards that. So, it's we have two families of weapon systems that we're considering. One is very much in the 6-7 realm right now. The other is still under development and it'll be a while before you see it here.
So the items that come on the site, you said a baseline, like 6.
Yeah, in any case, a more critical metric that I think you want to be concerned of here at the production site would be the manufacturing readiness level. And that is something that we're continuing to work through at our Midland, Texas facility, and our other production facilities to get all the specific subsystems up to the right level before we commence our first production here.
Okay, and then your hazard class of division on site, what you're storing, what you're working with, what micron size of chlorides that you're working with?
I can't disclose the smallest micron size other than to say that all the AP we're working with is at a 1.3 or 1.4 hazard classification.
Okay, so 1.3 Charlie, so it's greater than 50 micron. So you mentioned full-up assembly. Will there be warheads?
Yes. They'll go through the same insensitive munition testing. Those will be integrated onto the vehicle. Unfortunately, because of fairly stringent notes from our customer, I can't get into the nature of those, other than to say that they're being contemplated in the explosive waste that we've quoted.
And what's the max PDW you'll have on site storage?
Unfortunately, we can't disclose that, other than you've seen the hiding notes. AEW is net explosive weight. The reason we can't disclose it, we actually asked about disclosing it. Counterintelligence folks have basically told us that they don't want us sharing that, because if you know that and you know a lot of our assumptions, then you can infer a production rate if you're a U.S. adversary. It's something our customers are really sensitive to, unfortunately.
So you mentioned, if you have something that needs EOD support, have you broached that subject with the current EOD flag or local?
We have not yet, but our expectation is that we will as part of the consulting stand-up, and then we move on to production contract. It's on our radar.
Okay, because there are other options than just EOD support.
Interesting.
From the flight. They're pretty heavily taxed based.
I believe it.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
My name is Steve Horn. I was on sub. I have 2 questions. First, looking at the methods that you're going to be transporting both product and propellants, looks to me like you may be crossing Rio Rancho River, which is a critical source of water for New Mexico, which makes, I don't want to say the T word, but it makes this a very dangerous path for something that could affect the water in the river. And it wouldn't affect just locally. Albuquerque uses the river for 60% of its water, high water all the way down to Texas. So if these things were attacked while it's crossing that bridge in Bernalillo, it could be catastrophic. And so I would just ask you if these things are being considered, maybe an alternate method of transport. Like, I know we're near railroad, but that would be better. So I would just ask if you guys have thought about those kind of risks and impact to New Mexico, which is a very unique place. We only have a couple rivers here that are very important, and water is a big thing. I'm happy to see that you're not really using it for production. The other question I have has to do with also my experience in the Navy. I was on 2 tridents during Bravo trials, and I know what it took to clean up the tubes after we fired the test firings. And the residue that comes from solid propellant once it's lit off, at least back then, was very dangerous stuff, very lethal stuff. So if you're doing these test firings in the desert, I think it would be good for you to be able to provide to the community very good, clear assurances that this stuff is really being contained, it's being monitored, and if something happens, let's say you do a bad run, and you got to get rid of all the propellant for a whole load, it ends up that is as dangerous as the weapon or the, disposing of a lot of this stuff becomes a big concern, and it can also be a target. So I would ask that you would address all these things. Thank you.
Sure thing. I'll run through them real quick. The specific concern with the bridge, that is not something that we have specifically looked into, but we're in constant contact with counterintelligence and law enforcement. So we'll float that actually. I'll bring that up to again with FBI later this week. We'll ask about that. I do think a big part of this is the trucks. These sorts of materials are actually delivered all the time. I don't want to call out any specific facilities there. There's a lot of pretty hazardous chemicals that are used in a lot of industrial processes. You pass them on the freeway every day. The difference is they just don't know it. A lot of them hide in plain sight. Our deliveries, I mean, when we get the chlorine delivered, it comes in a FedEx truck. It has a little hazard placard on it, and that's it. That's all that's required by DOT. It's perfectly safe. I guess my point there is with terrorism, for example, a big part of this is you hide in plain sight, and it becomes very challenging if you're wanting to orchestrate something like that to pull out. So we'll bring it up to law enforcement and make sure that we consider it. In terms of propellant residue, you're very familiar with it from all our fires today. Our formulation, the particular formulation that we use in our solid propellant, we think poses a very low risk. We've reviewed it with New Mexico EPA. It doesn't present a persistent environmental risk. There's nothing in the plume that presents a danger to the public. However, I will also say to your point, if you're a bad batch, we need to work with those specialists on disposal. It needs to be moved out of site safely and disposed of. There's specialists that specialize in that. And I'll also say, let's say there's, let's say you spin a throat or something like that, a motor malfunctions. We also will have kind of a full set of procedures in place so that we can dispose of that damaged motor safely and so that we can do a cleanup of the area. That will be required as part of our procedures before we go to another static fire. We can't just, leave stuff sitting on the ground.
The Sandia study does address some of the soot concerns and debris concerns that you're asking about also.
And one of the reasons when you clean out a Trident D5 it's dangerous is because of this. It's more about the byproduct of the solid rocket motor combustion that ejects the weapon out of the tube. Is more of a corrosive problem. So you got to get it all out there. And then the solvents that are used to get it out of there are a real danger to the human. Not so much the residue.
So, we only have about 10 more minutes in this room. They have said that we can stay outside in the parking lot and answer questions, but we want to make sure, so if you have a question, ask the question, so we can get some more questions in the next 10 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, I'll try to be quick because we're running out of time. First of all, thank you, Rio Rancho, for showing up in your community. I really appreciate that. I feel like we're really passionate for our community. Whatever way you swing on this matter, it's just beautiful to see how many faces are here. So, just to kind of introduce myself, I'm Zach. I work for Rio County Open Space Department, so I've dedicated the last 8 years to natural resources and environmental conservation. And this project has me really concerned, I'm sure, as well as a lot of people in here, especially about the piece that I don't think that y'all are covering in depth enough, is the aquifer and the soil contamination. So I know you guys are saying you're not manufacturing chemicals on the site, but you are bringing them in. And I personally actually own a couple acres in this exact area, and that's a rough road. King Boulevard, like these roads right here, you're bringing in these heavy chemicals. It's a very big concern for a lot of us for the aquifer contamination. So from January through March, there were over 307 oil and gas spills in New Mexico. And that's not something that we want to repeat. And the last two pieces I'll say, because I know I'm running out of time, is you guys were talking about water consumption. We are completely aquifer based in Rio Rancho. We don't have any surface water, at least to my knowledge, here in the city. And you guys were saying something about that your units only use 50 households, but the water to power your facility for a 200,000 square foot building is using about 18 to 20 million gallons of water per year.
So where are you?
That's not our recent water specific number. We can get into that later, but I'm just saying is that the water to power your facility is the one that I think most people are concerned about. The other thing I'll say we're concerned about is this area, it may seem like a pretty rural area, but there are residents that live in the Rio Rancho Estates region, past Northern Meadows. Are these people that live in these regions going to be offered settlements for their property, or are you guys going to just kick them out? What is kind of that's one piece that I really didn't see a lot of in your presentation, including myself. Like I said, I'm a little bit past this way, probably about 2 miles out, but me and my fiance have lived out in this area for several years, and a lot of people do. It's they're few in between, but there are people that live in this region, and that's concerning, I think, to a lot of people in this room. So I'll be quiet.
No, I appreciate it. So let's see, I think we have 3 there. The first was risk of a spill in a route or something like that.
That's correct.
So PDV is going to be approved and paved out to the site. So that will reduce the risk, because I agree with you, it can give you a rough road, we don't try on that. So that will mitigate that risk. And then, I think one of the things I really want to emphasize is the number of steps in the process that involve chemicals being opened and moved are very few, and all those will be tightly controlled inside the building. So still controlled by trained personnel. Is it impossible that spill happens inside the building? It's not impossible, but that's also why everyone needs to be trained in spill prevention, spill kits, spill mitigation. On the question about people living in the area, so this is part of the importance of those inhabited building arcs, and none of them cross over the facility perimeter. This is configured in a way, and the DoD rules confirm that anyone outside of that perimeter gate, you are safe to continue living there, you are safe to be there. Now, if you're closer, you will get more noise from the static fires, right? It might be louder than maybe for a leaf blower or something. We have to look at the map. So that is one impact, just to be direct, but there's no there's no difference in safety or there's anything needs to be removed.
And just kind of one piece to that, and I'll make the next question is that I think a lot of people still get kind of concerned about the fire situation.
Sure.
So, if we can't respond, let's say for the residents that are near the area. I know we had a question earlier about Northern Meadows. That's probably the closest huge residential neighborhood that we have. But for the ones who own smaller properties, they're there, and fire responders can't actually get out there to mitigate this fire. What about those folks?
I would say that our main defense against fire, so we will have on-site firefighting, we're talking a lot about sort of plans coordination with all local agencies. A big part of it, I'll go back to 4145, a big part of that is hey, we have a worst case scenario, building catches on fire. It is a critical part of our plan that we have fire breaks, large fire breaks around those buildings, so if there's a fire, it's not going to spread. The on-site firefighters team is to make sure that you don't have embers or anything that are going to spread. And then once first responders arrive, the main priority is to be contained. Eliminating, let's say something does spread in the fire break, knocking down any potential wildfire, making sure there's no spread beyond it. Main priority there is prevention and coordination with everyone locally. Thank you so much. So, thank you.
I don't need a mic.
Okay.
I don't need a mic. No, our mayor is here from Rio Rancho. Can he say a few words to the people of Rio Rancho? Is he here? Or did he just break off?
Back here.
If he asks us for a few words for their full.
I had a really quick one back here, really quick.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
I'm just going to cover something that hasn't been covered at all. I know there are dangers with everything. I was in the Army, and I know there are risk assessments and everything. You can only do what you can do, and typically those standards are met, not exceeded. In some cases they are, but I know there are risks. My question is a little bit different, something that hasn't been completely covered. And my question deals with vibrations in the community. Rio Rancho, the whole west side of Albuquerque and Rio Rancho are well known for having foundation issues and things like that due to the kind of land we live on. And so when it comes to vibrations, you have PPB predictions, particle velocities, vibration contour, blast overpressure models, all that kind of thing, like how are the rockets going to be oriented, like what kind of effect is that going to have on the area, and if there is an effect, which you said it sounds like a vacuum cleaner, is that an old vacuum cleaner, or is it loud or new?
It's a little louder than a Dyson, quieter than a ladder shop vac.
So, like, do you already have like decibel predictions based on distance from?
Yes, yes.
How is all this going to affect our property values in the end?
Sure. So I'll hit each of those. On the first one, we have not done any studies on vibration from the ground. That's because we're not aware of any instances in which that's caused problems in any site, to be honest with you. But we're happy to look into it. Right. We're happy to look into it. We'll do so. Not aware of any problems in other places. It's loud. It's not that loud. If you're up close to it, it's about as loud as a jet engine. But vibrations through the ground. We will look into any seismic impacts. We don't think, based on our past experience, we do not think that those are substantial, but let us take a look and we'll let you guys know if there's a concern. You had a couple other questions, I'm so sorry. You had vibrations. Oh, property values, yes. Oh, yes. The sort of worst case scenario decibel range in Northern Meadows is in the vicinity of 80 decibels. We think it'll be lower than that because of the rolling terrain, but if you assumed it was flat and traveled, that's what we're showing. Property values, to be honest, I would steer most people towards the experience of most cities that have seen sort of an influx of industry and increase in high-wage jobs. I understand, of course, that there's concerns about, hey, the idea of looking near a missile factory at the same time, industry drawing in additional demand has historically also had pretty positive impacts where that lands. I'm no realtor, but we can draw conclusions.
So we're at time here in this facility. Like I said, we said they would answer some questions outside. And so, there was to leave. Sorry. The school is saying we need to get off the